Welcome in, everyone, to the Best Bell Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Bradley Stalder. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. You can subscribe to the Best Bell Fantasy Football YouTube channel. Just click the little red button and give some likes and subscribes there. Tonight, special Week 17 matchup target and fade with special guest Sam Choudhury from FTN. Sam, welcome onto the podcast. Happy to have you on. And I brought you on in particular because you sent out some tweets earlier this week about some late round wide receivers that really hit over the last couple of weeks of the fantasy playoffs and how important these Week 17 matchups are to the tournaments that we're playing in best ball. So welcome onto the podcast, Sam.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll kick it off with looking at some of the matchups from Week 17. I mean, we're talking, this is the end of December, beginning of January. It's June 3rd now, but we're drafting where the value is tremendous, right? We're 7 months away from the playoffs, making it to the championship. But we have to keep a lot of these narratives in mind when you're drafting. And in Week 17, we have to keep the temperature in mind. We have to keep in mind who's the home team, who's the away team, pace of play, players who may or may not be available at that point. We're going to go through some of the matchups, some of the players that we like, maybe some late round stackable pieces, and we'll go from there. All right. And Jose is ready to pick up some guidance and tips as well. Thanks for tuning in, Jose. All right. We'll kick it off. The Thursday night game, December 29th, Dallas comes to Tennessee. They play the Titans. In Tennessee, in Nashville, the highs are typically in the 50s, lows are in the 30s. Dallas was a fast-paced team last year and fast-paced in 2020. Sam, do we expect the Cowboys to be fast-paced here again in 2022?
I mean, the Dallas is actually really tough for me because, I was going into it thinking that I'm pretty out on Dallas. I mean, as soon as Amari Cooper got traded, it was like CeeDee Lamb to the moon, and I thought he'd be priced out of my price range. But I mean, I guess he's a fair price. Like you'll see him go like 2-3, 2-4. But I mean, at the end of the day, Dak Prescott, he's going at 84, 85, like around the QB 7 to 8 most drafts. So I mean, he's decent at that price. Like I said, it's not someone that I'm like out of my way to go grab, but I mean, I've been able to double tap Dalton Schultz and Dak Prescott when I'm getting squeezed out of ADP. So like Dallas is just one of those teams that like I'm not actively going out of my way to target, but I mean I like a lot of their pieces. Like I do want exposure to CeeDee Lamb. I mean I do think it's going to be a breakout season for him, and then it just falls in line with the rest of the team. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm lukewarm on Dallas, but I mean, they have some nice values. I'd say Dalton Schultz is probably the guy from Dallas that I'm getting to a decent amount, but he's not someone that or Dallas isn't a team that I'm like looking to structure my best ball portfolio around.
I mean, looking at Dalton Schultz, tight end 6 right now on Best Ball Mania 3. There is a significant teardrop between the top 5 ending in George Kittle and Dalton Schultz. Kittle's ADP 48, so the end of the 4th round. Dalton Schultz 73, start of what is that? The 7th round. We think that Schultz is going to be the number 2 target on this team, but lately we've heard a lot of positive rumblings about Jalen Tolbert. There's been a little bit of love for James Washington. I'm not sold on either of those being players that maybe they'll be able to step up near the end of the season. But maybe like a Simi Fehoko is like a super deep player here.
Yeah, I'm actually so glad you brought up Semi Fehoko because the thing that I'm going to be focusing on this year is diversifying my 18th round player and just grabbing those guys that aren't being drafted at all. Like I think Elijah Mitchell and Cordell Patterson were like 3% of drafts, but I don't think a lot of teams got through because the guys drafting. I mean, we don't know if they're making the correct structures or whatnot. But I'm really glad you mentioned Semi Fehoko because that's someone that I'm looking at that I have circled for an 18th round pick. But I'm not going to be taking him now. I'm going to be taking him closer to the regular season. Because if he's still not getting drafted, those are the guys that I want to target that aren't being drafted. But yeah, Tolbert and Washington are banged up right now on the side. So Semi Fehoko is running with the ones. So that's definitely someone to keep your eye on.
He's a big-bodied wide receiver. I think he's 6'4", 220 plus, and his player profiler comp is Alshon Jeffrey, which I
Wow.
thought was pretty interesting to me. So maybe, just maybe, who knows? But getting back into this game, Tennessee was 7th in plays per game last season, but 22nd in 2020. And I think that was driven out of twofold. One is Derrick Henry was out for a significant part of last year. So that portion of their offense had to change. And second, they were winning games that we weren't expecting them to. So positive game script leading to more plays. I think it goes back down to the mid-teens. I don't think they're going to be as fast of a paced team. They're not going to have as many possessions.
Yeah, no, I'm completely with you. And Tennessee is a team that I'm pretty much not getting anything from. I mean, I think Traylon Burks, you're seeing some of his conditioning concerns, which, I mean, his ADP is fair, but it's not someone that I'm like smashing at ADP or whatever. Derrick Henry's pretty interesting. I mean, I've seen him go to the second round now, which, like, I mean, I'm not going to have much Derrick Henry, but I mean, that's something that you just got to sprinkle in your portfolio when you get that kind of value. And I mean, you don't want to be buried by the big dog in December, but yeah, I mean, Tennessee, I don't really have much to say about. I guess Robert Woods, they're saying, I mean, he'll be fine. He could be fine week 1. I mean, he's late enough where I don't mind sprinkling him in. But yeah, I mean, I have a few teams that I'm like pretty much crossing off, and I'd say Tennessee is probably one of them.
So looking at some of the defensive side of the ball, the Cowboys I'm referencing the unit grades that Mike Clay put out just as a reference. I don't have the specific players. I haven't done that particular grading, but using those references, at least the defensive interior for the Cowboys defense seems to be the weakest part of that defense. And if it's a Derrick Henry, that's interesting to me. If they don't address the defensive interior, that could be a Derrick Henry game at home on Thursday night prime time. Whereas the Cowboys will be facing off against the Titans secondary, which is the cornerbacks are their worst part of their defensive unit. So this could be a CD Lamb game. It could be any of the other wide receivers. So taking, as you said earlier, like rotating through those Dallas wide receivers that are extra pieces, I think that's a smart move.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you got Henry, that's an easy 18th rounder to tack on. Matchups aside, I mean, Tennessee wants to run through Derrick Henry no matter what. And like I said, I mean, even though I'm not going to have much of Henry, like, that's not a guy that I can completely fade because you can get buried in the playoffs by Derrick Henry. So,
Or if
yeah, I
you
mean,
take a
I'm like,
17th round Hassan Haskins, if you
yeah.
don't get Henry, or I don't know who the other Tennessee running back they brought in, because they lost Donta Foreman. He went to
Oh yeah,
Carolina.
they re-signed the pass catching or Hilliard. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe if you're not getting Henry, but you want part of that game, possibly.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to Sunday, January 1st. Arizona at Atlanta. It's in a dome, so we don't have to worry about weather or anything like that. Arizona was 8th in plays per game last season and 3rd in 2020, so a pretty fast-paced team. Atlanta, 31st last year, but we saw a stark difference between when Calvin Ridley was there and when Calvin Ridley left the team. And now with Atlanta, their starting quarterback is going to be Marcus Mariota, or maybe by that time, Desmond Ritter. I'm concerned that their pace of play is going to be really slow. So I may not want, if you want a part of this game, maybe a Darrell Williams or a James Conner might be an interesting part.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Marquis Brown, I don't know what's up with that ADP. I mean, he's shot to the moon now. Like, he's going inside the top 40 overall picks. And it's interesting because you'll see Kyler drop a fair amount. And a lot of the times I won't have Arizona, but you can tack on Zach Ertz, which I guess if there's anyone I'm going after, Zach Ertz, I really like at the ADP. But yeah.
The weakest part of the Cardinals defense is the cornerback position. So maybe some Drake London love. Do you have an opinion of the second wide receiver on this team? Because I think they're just throwing things against the wall.
I mean, I think it might be Brian. I mean, Mr. Fourth Quarter himself. And, that's purely based on draft pedigree. And like they did make a trade to bring him in. You got to imagine if there's someone else locked in with Drake London, it's going to be Brian Edwards because Meaty Zacchaeus, they're not paying him anything. Auden Tate, he hasn't been anything. So I think if there's a wide receiver too that you can feel confident about, I think it'd be Brian Edwards, which I mean, if I do have Arizona stack, I don't mind taking him in the 18th round either.
The Falcons defense, there's a lot of blue on this. It's not so good. Their edge and their safety just are garbage according to Clay. I mean,
Man,
that's a big problem. The Falcons are defense. The cornerbacks are pretty strong. So maybe this is a fade for Marquis Brown. DeAndre Hopkins should be back by this time as well. So maybe it is another reason for us to be lowering Hopkins. I've only taken him when his ADP is below 80.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. I think I got Marquise Brown earlier when his ADP wasn't as high, and I was able to take Kyler. And I was thinking how late DeAndre Hopkins would have to fall for me to feel comfortable taking him, and he did fall past 80, and I actually was able to snag him. So I'm the same way. Like he'll have to drop below his ADP, and I mean he has been dropping. So yeah, I would say I'm only taking Hopkins either below ADP or with Arizona stacks. But other than that, I mean, he was surviving through touchdowns, so he's not someone that I'm scared to fade anyways. But yeah, I feel the same way with Hop.
All right, we'll keep moving. Chicago at Detroit in week 17. The Bears come to the Lions. And last year, Chicago was 14th in plays per game, 16th in 2020, but they've got a new coach. Not sure what his pedigree is going to bring to like the pace of play for the Bears, but I am concerned about their offensive weapons. And even if someone emerges, I don't think there's a very high ceiling for the Byron Pringles of the world or the Velus Joneses of the world, especially against the Detroit Lions, they've improved their team in a lot of ways. And this very well may be the Lions' stamp into a playoff position, or they might be fighting for something by that time in the season. For the Lions, their defense, their linebackers struggle, but other than that, it's not too bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, actually, I'm pretty intrigued by this game, to be honest. I mean, I actually like the ADPs. I mean, I think Mooney, I think he's fair where he's going. I don't mind grabbing shares of Mooney. I mean, he's going to be a volume hog, no A-Rob, another season with Fields, and I'm actually pretty in on Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, I mean, you got to make a decision there. It's either him, Drake London, Treylon Burks with all the rookies, but I mean, they already said, I think yesterday, I want to say that Jamison Williams isn't going to be there the first portion of the season. I'm not scared of DJ Chark. I mean, they want to feed him the ball. And I understand that he had his production without Hawkinson and Swift playing. But I mean, that's baked into his ADP. Like he's going outside the top 70 picks. At that price, I'm buying. And I mean, I've been able to double tap Mooney and Amon-Ra in like around the same range. And I mean, that's an easy back and forth correlation for week 17. And I mean, think about where we're getting Justin Fields right now compared to last year. I mean, it's fair to knock him down because I mean, we thought he was going to have Allen Robinson. We were more optimistic about the Bears. He has that rushing upside. And I mean, you can easily take him and Cole Kmet as a backdoor stack. I found myself doing that a lot. And as far as Byron Pringle, Velus Jones, I mean, they'll only be in Bears stack, but I mean, definitely, I agree with you. They don't have that ceiling to win your league. If they fit your lineup, I'll take shots there. But I mean, we saw Detroit and Seattle be the game you had to have last year in Week 17. I'm not going to count Detroit out this year.
I mean, and it's in a dome. Who knows if it becomes a little bit more fast paced? Jamison Williams may be back by this time and maybe in full health. Who knows? It'll been almost a full year at this point from his recovery of the ACL tear. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, you mentioned he's wide receiver 34. I think that in the beginning of the year, like if you're doing like a drafters fantasy, I think he's a better pick for that type of tournament than the Best Ball Mania 3, just because Jamison Williams is going to miss the first 4, 6, however many games. And Amon-Ra, the reason why I'm a little more optimistic is they could have gone in and tried to draft a Drake London or drafted a Treylon Burks or drafted someone like that. But they instead drafted Jamison Williams and then signed DJ Chark, who's a deep threat. He doesn't play the same role as Amon-Ra St. Brown. So it gives me more confidence that they intentionally targeted this offseason, wide receivers that don't fit the role that Amon-Ra fits.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with you. And I'm a big believer of targets are earned. And you can say with the guys being out, but I mean, if you saw Amon-Ra play, I mean, he's a talented dude. Like, he's going to have those big plays. And another thing I was looking at, to advance the teams that advanced just out of their lobby, I mean, they were separated by a little over 10 points. I mean, even if you have those big production games in the beginning of the season from Amon-Ra, I mean, that's pretty valuable in your lobby. But yeah, I mean, I think he's being fairly discounted with everyone else coming back, them bringing in new receivers. So yeah, I like where he's going.
Looking at the Bears defense, the only strength is linebacker. So the Lions may be able to have their way week 17 with the Bears defense. The Bears are in a lot of trouble this year.
I mean, 18th round Jamal Williams, why not?
maybe he falls in the end zone. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Denver at Kansas City. We'll get to a more exciting game. I think this is very interesting because Denver last year was 26th in plays per game, but 15th in 2020. They've revamped a lot of things. Most importantly, Russell Wilson. I think that the wide receiver you want in this game is Cortland Sutton.
Yeah.
He's the deep ball threat, touchdown maker, big-bodied wide receiver. He has the spike week potential, more so than what Jerry Jeudy has shown over the last 2 seasons. And looking at where the Chiefs are, the Chiefs cornerbacks are like one of their weak points. So I think that's a matchup that we should be targeting is Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say this is probably definitely top 3 of the games I'm targeting in week 17. I don't have a definitive stand with the Sutton Jeudy. I think if I have to pick one, I like Jeudy slightly more. But I mean, as far as my portfolio goes, like I'm split right down the middle. Like it's not gonna be a Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods for me. I'm gonna completely split my exposure. And I mean, I love where Russell Wilson's going at ADP, but I completely agree with you. And it's pretty tough because I hate the Chiefs wide receivers ADP besides MVS probably.
Ooh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
His ADP is great, but I mean he's slowly rising too. But that's a tough part for me is I'm getting a lot of the Denver side with Russell Wilson, but I definitely want some Mahomes. But it's kind of hard because like I want to pair him with MVS where he goes, but I can't guarantee that. And I don't want to take Juju where he's going. If I get Travis Kelce, I mean that's fine to pair with Mahomes. But yeah, I need to start getting more of the Chiefs side, but that's definitely a game I'm targeting. And I mean, tack on 16th round KJ Hamler. Why not?
Yes, absolutely. Speaking to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, he's going as wide receiver 48 right now, outside the top 100 of ADP. But I just sent a tweet out last night or the night before, and it was a side-by-side comparison. Mecole Hardman, who's going round 11, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who's going round 9. And it wasn't even close. Their type of spike weeks that they've shown over the last 3 years. Mecole Hardman is consistently between 13 and 15 PPR fantasy points as his like 84th percentile outcome weekly. Whereas with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, 2 of his 3 years have at least been 18 PPR fantasy points. So, I mean, it's clear to me that Marquez Valdes-Scantling is the best ball play you want. It concerns me the amount of love that Mecole Hardman is getting on the Twitter timeline these days. Sam, can you be the devil's advocate maybe here?
When do we stop with Mecole Hardman? How many times do we have to go through this? And I mean, you mentioned the spike weeks. Like, first off, MVS's ceiling we mentioned is a lot higher, but I mean, they brought this guy in for a reason. He's getting paid more than Juju, and you talk about the spike weeks. I mean, that was in the Green Bay Packers offense, I mean, you look at their pace of play. I mean, he didn't have the opportunities for the spike weeks, and he was still able to produce. Can you imagine him in an Andy Reid offense with Mahomes looking to sling it downfield all the time? I mean, his ceiling is super high, and I liked what I saw from him. Everyone craps on MVS, but no, I really like
he's a
his
boom
cost.
bust. He's a cheaper Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. I mean, he obviously doesn't really have a floor, but we don't know what it's like in the Chiefs
What does it
offense.
matter if you have a floor? Like, he's
Yeah,
wide receiver 48. You've already drafted your 3 wide receivers that you're going to start. Maybe
exactly.
he's your wide receiver 5. I mean, he's been my wide receiver 6 sometimes.
Yeah, and like I mean, Skye Moore, what is he going? He's like going the 7th, 8th round, and
I
I
haven't
mean,
gotten
we
a lot
don't.
of Skye Moore.
I actually have 0% of Skye Moore. I mean, I know it's still early in the best ball, but I have not gotten Skye Moore at all. I mean, we don't know like what the 3 wide receiver sets are going to be. I mean, you got to imagine MVS and Juju are part of it, but I mean, Skye Moore is a rookie. They took him the 2nd round, but yeah, at cost, give me MVS all day for sure.
Oh, music to my ears, Sam. You can come on the podcast again. Okay, we'll move to a less enticing for fantasy matchup. Miami at New England. Highs of 40s in the 40s, lows in the 20s. It's based on what I'm looking at. This could be one of the coldest games matchup wise. Yeah, there we go. Off the schneid, before we get into the Miami New England game, these guys, Skye Moore is unreal value in the big board.
Oh,
Yes,
I
in the big
would love
board.
to
Yeah.
wait. Yeah, I would love to pull up my big board. Skye Moore is my highest exposure player in the big board. He was a 20th round pick in the big board. My highest exposure in the big board are Brandon Cooks and Skye Moore. I mean,
Oh,
I'm
yes. Let's
completely
go.
with you.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm getting sticker shock too, is because like I was able to get him in the 20th round. And then now, I don't know. I can't stomach paying an 8th round ADP, which I mean, it's
He's
different. You
almost
know, we
7th
didn't know his
round. He's
peak.
going at 84.4. So,
Yeah, that's crazy. And I mean, he already has a hamstring problem. He's been sidelined this week too. So,
man, oh, man.
I mean, that's definitely. I mean, I think his ADP is going to drop a fair amount, and that's when I'll get my exposure. But for the time being, I'm completely off.
All right, finally. Oh, I guess not. We'll talk about James Cook in the Buffalo Cincinnati game, but we'll get there. We'll get there off the schneid. The Miami New England game. This could be the coldest matchup of Week 17. It's in New England. New England 22nd and 29th in plays per game over the last 2 seasons. Belichick just wants to run the ball. They did bring in Devontae Parker, but that's not like a high pace player. That's just a big body receiver down the field. He's going to get 18-20% target share, maybe bump Nelson Aguilar and fight Jacoby Myers for some targets, but that's not the type of player that changes the pace of your game. And Mac Jones, he's a pocket passer, so it's not going to be run around. You know, OTAs, there was like a little camp hype about Jones being a little bit more mobile. Let's not get carried away.
Yeah.
This could be one of the slowest pace games, and it could be one of the coldest games. It's one of the big avoids, I think, of all the matchups.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a Patriots player that I'm looking to draft at all. I mean, I guess like Jacoby Myers is fair, which actually, I mean, Devontae Parker's ADP is ahead of Jacoby Myers, which I'd rather take Jacoby Myers, but I mean, Patriots, I can't get behind that. I mean, we don't know their backfield. I'm not looking at their receivers, but yeah, I'm completely with you on that one.
Whereas Miami last year 11th in plays per game, 20th in 2020, but they have a new head coach, McDaniel, and last year in San Francisco, the 49ers were 28th in plays per game. So they were running super slow. I know that there's been a lot of talk of getting Waddle in space and getting Tyreek Hill in space. Cedric Wilson they brought in as a free agent, but I am concerned that this matchup, the location, the temperature, all of it is just a formula for disaster for fantasy.
Yeah, I mean the Dolphin player that I'm getting a lot of is Sony Michelle in the 18th round. I think that's
Revenge
a
game, Sony
smash.
Michelle.
Yeah, Sony Michelle in that revenge game. I mean, I think that's a smash. I mean, it's weird how the fantasy landscape works because you heard buzz about Sony Michelle getting worked in. I think some beat reporters said that he's going to get the early down carries and could out touch Chase Edmonds. And then you see Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert's ADP start to fall, but Sony Michelle stays in the 18th round. So I don't really get why we're downgrading Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert, which is fair. Mostert, we don't even know if he's going to be ready by week 1. But then it's like, why is Sony Michelle staying in the 18th round? You know what I mean? If you can guarantee a floor from a running back who has a chance to get the most touches on his team, I mean, that's a guy that I'm getting to a lot. And yeah, I'm not really touching any of the other Miami guys. Like Tyreek Hill, I don't like in the second round, but he's definitely going to be an exposure player where I just have to take him sometime because I don't want to be buried by Tyreek Hill. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, I
Because
don't
who
like his
knows? Maybe he
ADP.
does take one to the house and he's under drafted because of this
Exactly.
week 17 matchup. Who knows?
Exactly. I mean, we saw Rashad Penny be the RB1 for 3 straight weeks in the playoffs. You never know, but definitely it's someone that I don't like the second round ADP, but I'm gonna have to take some just because I know he can blow up any given week.
And that's why you want to play on a few different sites too. As I mentioned, drafters.com is or drafters fantasy. They have it's a 17-week tournament. You're not depending upon this tough matchup. I think Tyreek Hill does have a lot of spike weeks in him. We've seen he's been top 5 each of the last few years. Obviously quarterback downgrade, but you know that he's fast. You know that they're going to get him the ball in space. I think it's a little harder to pin down when those games are going to happen. So a season-long tournament is probably a better spot for Tyreek Hill in the second round.
Yeah, I agree. But also to your point, I mean, they're giving $1 million for the highest scoring regular season team too. That's gonna be a decision you're gonna have to make because I mean you're seeing the week 17 Twitter come alive, but if you will get $1 million for just having the highest scoring team in general. So it's if you're not gonna win the
It's a
two
million
million, I'm
dollars.
okay with $1 million. So
Oh,
but
shucks.
yeah.
We'll keep moving to Indy coming to the Giants in Jersey. Highs of 40s, lows in 30s. That's your typical weather for your New York, New Jersey. But over the last couple years, the Colts 21st in pace of play or in plays per game last year, 12th in 2020. The Giants 25th and 30th in plays per game in 2020. I have a feeling this is going to be one of those low scoring games that Indy ends up winning. I don't know, 17-13 or something like that. It's going to be low scoring. The weather's probably not going to be too great. Matt Ryan, who likes to play in his domes, is not. And who knows who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Giants come week 17? Is it really going to be Daniel Jones, or maybe there's another player they want to test out and see by that time?
Yeah, I mean Daniel Jones has been getting a decent amount of buzz, which I don't have any Daniel Jones as of right now, but I mean it's probably going to be a JT eruption spot. I mean that's the only guy you can really get behind. And I mean Michael Pittman I feel like goes up more and more every day. But I mean I got to say honestly though, I'm getting a lot of the Giants wide receivers. I mean
Mm-hmm.
their values are pretty nice like I mean, whoever you want to say is wide receiver 1 between Tony and Galladay. I mean, they're both going outside the top 50 wide receivers. I mean, one of them is like criminally mispriced, so I don't mind sprinkling in either of those here and there. And Wando Robinson is still in the
Yes.
18th
Thank
round,
you.
but I mean he's like an auto pick for me in the 18th round to be honest. If I need a receiver, but I mean, yeah, I love his film. He got good draft capital, which I was really happy to see. I mean, he's the way I see it is he's like Rondell Moore and Isaiah McKenzie, and he could be a full-time player. I mean, that'd be insane. I mean, we know Brian Dable is in New York. Like, what if he gave the Isaiah McKenzie role to Robinson, but
Mm.
made him a full-time player? But yeah, I'd say the Giants wide receivers are pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean the Giants face off against the Colts and their defense. The edge is a weakness, but the safety spot for the Colts is their worst defensive unit as of right now. The secondary might be a little bit vulnerable. And then on the flip side for the Giants, their edge rushers and their safeties as well are weak spots. So but the Giants actually here's maybe a little pushback on the JT. they've got a 3.6 grade for their defensive interior. And that, based on what I'm looking at, there are only 3 teams that have higher grades for that particular unit in the NFL among the grades that Mike Clay gives. So the Steelers are a 4, the Commanders are a 3.8, the Rams are a 3.9, and then it goes down to the Giants. So maybe a little pushback, but
Yeah. I mean, we saw this narrative with JT against the Bills defense when he had over 50 points. So,
yeah,
but I mean, you don't need an argument to draft JT.
no,
But
not at
I mean,
all.
I'm with you. It's like the Colts, I'm not really getting much of besides JT, and Giants. I mean,
Pittman,
I
maybe some
like their
Pittman.
yeah. Like I said, I got some early shares of Pittman, but like he's rising more and more every day. So if he keeps rising, I don't know how much more I'll get, but I mean, I got a good bit of Pittman early in the drafts, but yeah, I have been noticed him climbing. And they're saying Paris Campbell is actually running as a wide receiver too right now, which is interesting. Which, like I said, I mean, that's a player that like if he continues to get undrafted in the 18th round, I'll mark him to the list. But I mean, he was a talented player. I mean, I'm an Ohio State fan, so I liked a lot of Paris Campbell's tape, and if he can stay healthy, I mean, we really don't know what kind of player Paris Campbell is, but those are the type of guys I want to take
We
shots
know he's been
on.
injured. That's the type of player he's
Right.
unfortunately a former second round pick, Paris Campbell. It's not a surprise that he's running ahead of Alec Pierce, but I think by this time Alec Pierce might be the
Oh yeah,
number two.
you don't have to talk to me about Alec Pierce. I went to UC and I went to all of Alec Pierce's game. Desmond Ritter, Alec Pierce. I love the dude for sure, but yeah, I mean, we'll see how it shakes out. But Campbell is someone that I'm thinking of adding to the 18th round, and yeah, I don't mind taking Pierce at where he's going to. He's pretty late too, so yeah.
We'll keep moving. New Orleans comes to Philadelphia. In Philly, this is a mid upper 40s, low of the 30s. New Orleans last year, 23rd in plays per game. Part of those, I think, was influenced by Taysom Hill at being at quarterback because they were 10th in plays per game in 2020 when Drew Brees was there. I'm not sure we have a good sample size of what Jameis Winston can bring to the table because he only played a few games, but 5 full games, and then a sixth where he left early due to the ACL tear. I think it is going to be Jameis who's the starting quarterback, but we know Philly, they like to run the ball. They were the run heaviest team in the NFL last year, but they added AJ Brown. So, what does that mean for this matchup? New Orleans coming to Philly.
Yeah, I mean Philly's a team that I mean I like a lot. AJ Brown, I mean we know he's one of the best receivers in the league, and it's fair to assume that he's going to take a step back. But I mean, his ADP is like 25 right now. I mean, I mean I don't mind taking him at ADP. I understand that the floor is shaky. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. New system. I mean Jalen Hurts is a smash, and I think I'm taking AJ Brown more in hopes to get the stack later on. And from the reports today, I mean they were saying Devontae Smith was killing it. AJ Brown came out with high praise. And that's another guy. I mean, you want to talk about the big board. I mean, he was going between picks in the 50 to 60 range. And now he's like 75-ish. So that's I mean, we know the talented player, first round pick. I mean, what if he is the wide receiver one?
Get out of here.
I'm not saying it's likely. And what if AJ Brown can't stay healthy again? But
I think
regardless,
that's
I
the
mean,
narrative that gets Smith to be the wide receiver one.
yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think it's a small chance, but I mean, you just never know. I mean, you got the shower narrative with Hurts and Smith too, but Dallas Goddard is a pretty
Shower
fair
narratives
ADP.
remain undefeated, Sam.
Yeah, facts. I mean, we saw Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase last year, didn't we?
This year,
But
maybe we'll get
yeah,
some Lawrence Etienne.
that's what
I'm
I'm
here
hoping
for
for. Yeah,
it.
no, I like that.
But a little insight about the Saints. So Mike Clay grades from a 0.1 to a 4.0, 0.1 being like terrible, like the worst, and 4.0 being the best. 3.9 is the edge grade for the Saints, 3.6 for the linebackers, 3.6 for the cornerbacks, 3.6 for the safeties. So only the defensive interior is identified as a weakness that's below a 2.0, but still not disastrous. Like this Saints defense could be just stifling. That could be a narrative in Philly. Maybe the Philly stack isn't one you want to target in week 17.
No, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, we know that that's what the Saints have been for years. You rely on that defense, and then I mean, even with Drew Brees the last couple of years, they were limiting him. I mean, they promoted their defensive coordinator as their head coach, right? I mean, they want to run or they want the team to go through their defense, and I mean, the Saints are a tricky team for me too because I like Kamara, but I don't know the whole suspension thing. Which actually why I mean Mark Ingram, I'm taking the 18th round as well.
That's
And
interesting.
yeah, no, I mean Mark Ingram is completely free. I mean, he's going undrafted. I mean, we saw when Mark Ingram when the Texans traded Mark Ingram to the Saints. I mean, he was thrown in right away. I mean, they're fine using a two-headed backfield, and it's like, what if you get 6 weeks of Mark Ingram? I mean, you can say what you want about his age, but I mean, 6 weeks of a starting running back for a team that's trying to run the ball. I mean, like I said, I mean, the points separating your lobby aren't that much. So it's like you get Mark Ingram in there for 4 or 6 games, and he has standalone value for the rest of the year. I mean, that's a smash. And I mean, as soon as you see the suspension, I mean, he's going to be a 14th round pick, 13th, 14th round pick.
I mean, Kamara, yeah, if he gets suspended mid-season, boom, he's a zero for you later on. At least in
Exactly.
talking with Drew Davenport, it seems like the timeline is shifting a little bit. It's possible that Kamara doesn't get suspended until 2023 if that happens,
Mhm.
but there's no definitive word right now. It's just that the timeline has maybe shifted. So I'm not sure about. Yeah, still, we know Kamara, except for last year, he hadn't had 200 carries in a season, and now
Mhm.
he was at like 240. But with
Yeah.
the additions of the pass catchers Olave and Landry, and maybe the return of Thomas, it's possible that you mentioned Ingram, but also off the schneid is throwing in Abram Smith as well. So
Yeah. See, I was waiting for Abram Smith to be mentioned, but I don't know. I mean, this team really likes Mark Ingram, and like they didn't spend draft capital on Abram Smith, and yeah, that was interesting for sure. But I don't know. I mean, you saw when they traded for Mark Ingram. I mean, Alvin Kamara was a true workhorse back before Ingram came. I mean, he was getting like over 85% of the touches. I mean, he was more of an inside the tackles runner for the first half of the season. And like you saw, as soon as Ingram came, like instantly thrown back in there. I mean, he looked pretty good. Like he looked like the Saints Ingram. I mean, if Kamara is suspended, I definitely think Smith will get his run. But yeah, I mean, Ingram's a guy that I'm getting in the 18th round when a lot of my 18th round targets are gone because I don't think he's going to be a zero end of the day. And it's you're not spending high draft capital on him. And what if he gets run as a starting running back?
I mean, we'll see how it plays out this offseason. You're taking a couple shots on these late round running backs. If you've got 4 running backs and you're going into the last round, maybe just pick up the 5th one there. Or if you're going 0 running back, like these are the types of shots you want to take. Players who can step into big roles.
Oh, actually, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
What are you doing with Taysom Hill? At the tight end eligibility.
Well, I got screwed because I drafted him as a quarterback earlier in the offseason. I think he's gonna play ahead of Adam Troutman, at least to start, and then that's meaningful. The Saints have used Taysom Hill in a lot of different ways. They intentionally moved him back to tight end to focus on that. He's always been a touchdown maker and he's got the speed. So I'm also concerned though that the pass catchers like Landry and Olave will play ahead of him, will have higher target shares. Michael Thomas, if he's back too, like we could say that Taysom Hill is the number 1 tight end on this team, but it might not matter.
Yeah, no, I think he's the definition of boom bust, and I mean I like him as a third tight end for sure. But I mean, even though he's a tight end, they're gonna have some gadget plays for him. And I mean, people are making the scenario. I mean, you can't tell me there's no way that Taysom Hill gets run at quarterback a couple games. I mean, that's definitely plausible. I mean, I think Best Ball Mania would set on fire if he's a quarterback in the playoff weeks. But that's just someone that I can't have zero exposure to. But yeah, I don't mind him as a third tight end for the spike weeks when he gets those gadget plays.
I've usually been like pairing him with Jameis Winston if
Yeah.
I've gotten Winston as my quarterback 2, typically, because that Winston's going as like quarterback 20 in these drafts. Pairing him as the really late stackable piece, maybe. but I'm
Yeah,
not super
I mean,
excited.
yeah, no, I'm normally if I'm in the 18th round looking for a tight end, like Evan Engram is there, Austin Hooper, they're saying looks pretty good. I'll go to those, but it's like I gotta sprinkle in some Taysom Hill just in case. They're all have FOMO.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. All right, we'll keep moving. Carolina comes to Tampa. The highs typically in Tampa Bay are in the 70s. The lows are in the 50s. This is going to be a 1 p.m. game. So we're looking at the weather's going to be good. Both teams are high pace of play teams. Tampa Bay was third last year in plays per game, Carolina 10th. So we're talking two top 10 teams. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we know that they're a high pace of play team with Tom Brady. And looking at the Panthers defense, they're pretty bad going into 2022. This is a recipe for success. If you get Christian McCaffrey plus the Buccaneers, holy buckets. This is a matchup maybe you want over the Kansas City Denver.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love this game. I think I like every fantasy viable asset besides whoever Carolina's quarterback is. But like
Yes.
I'll take all these guys at their ADP. Fournette. Fournette's going in the third round often now. That's criminal. I don't know how he goes in the third round.
He's a second round
Yeah.
smash.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like I'm well above the field on Brady. Last year in DFS, no one made me more money than Brady. I played Brady stacks every week and it was so underowned. It was crazy. I'll go right back to I'm gonna fade the injury narrative with CMC, and if I don't get CMC, I'll take Dante Foreman in the 18th round.
Mm.
So Robbie Anderson, his ADP is really nice too for a wide receiver. He's gonna be on the field every play. He had over 100 targets, which is crazy, the fantasy season he had. But I think he'll bounce back. We've seen him be successful with Darnold before. He'll have those spike weeks. But, yeah, the Bucs side, I love all the Bucs. Even Godwin's ADP is dropping now because we don't know when he's going to start the season. Russell Gage is a smash at ADP.
Yes. Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah. He's one of those guys where, like, yeah, he'll have a good early season run if Godwin's not healthy. But I think he's gonna be a consistent guy. He's not Antonio Brown, but Brady made 3 wide receivers fantasy relevant all the time. And Gronk is the most mispriced guy. Gronk is coming back. I don't care what anyone says. I'm like going outside of
Yes.
130, and
Yes.
I'll keep taking him.
But here's the
That's
thing
crazy.
with Gronk, he's going at what, like tight end? Let me pull it up. He's going as tight end 12. In no scenario, in no world is Rob Gronkowski tight end 12. He's either tight
No.
end 3 or 4, or he's a 0. Like there's
Yeah.
no in between. This is the hedge. No, like
Yeah.
you draft
Yeah.
Rob Gronkowski.
Exactly. Yeah, he's going after Pat Fryermuth, but it's like
Zach Ertz.
Yeah,
This is half PPR.
Yeah,
like
it is
Zach
ridiculous.
Ertz is worthless in half PPR.
He was a tight end 3 in points per game. That's incredible value. And yeah, he's definitely someone that you want to make a stand on, but
Wheeler's saying 8th, 9th round for Gage. I still think that that's a good price for him because Antonio Brown is gone. Chris Godwin, ACL tear. We don't I say draft Rob Gronkowski, but it's possible he doesn't come back. There is a legitimate way in which Russell Gage, there were serious spike weeks for Russell Gage last year on one of the worst offenses in the NFL, in the Atlanta Falcons. It was Russell Gage as your wide receiver 1, and he left Atlanta, handpicked by Tom Brady, big time free agent signing to go and play with the Bucs and fill that Antonio Brown role. It's fantasy relevance, fantasy gold. I'm engaged truther for years. Finally, he's getting his opportunity in Tampa Bay. I was trading 2nd round picks a couple years ago in Dynasty for Russell Gage, and boy, is it paying off.
Yeah, Brady handpicked him. Like he called him. He tore it up against the Bucs and Archer. I've actually seen that guy before in my drafts too. Yeah, I have no idea who that is. But back to Kev's point, actually, I did notice Russell Gage's ADP go up, but it's kind of weird because do you have the wide receivers he's going around?
Yeah, let me pull that up. He's going around. Where did I miss him? Where is he? Gage is wide receiver 44, ADP 90, and he's going behind Christian Kirk. He's going behind Skye Moore. He's going behind Hunter Renfrow. He's going behind DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, those are all players
Yeah.
that I would take Russell Gage over.
Yeah, dude, that I was gonna go back to Kev's point is his ADP has gone up, but I've noticed that because when I was looking at Gage, I mean, he was still like the best player available in my rankings. I think as a whole, the whole wide receiver is just bumped up a little bit, and the running backs are falling down. I agree with you. I mean, I was smashing in the 12th, obviously, but with the ADP thing, I'm still taking him at cost because I think the whole wide receivers in that range are rising right now. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I love them, like even relative to those wide receivers. But I mean, also I'm taking Brady, so that falls in line. If you have CMC, that's like a cheap run back right there. But yeah, I mean, he just fits a lot of things. So especially he's outside of your top three wide receivers. He's a nice guy.
We'll keep going. Cleveland at Washington. This is one of those low ones that I'm concerned about. It's in Washington. You never know what the weather's going to be like in DC. The highs are typically upper 40s, low 30s. Cleveland was 20th in plays per game and 21st in 2020. So they're not a fast-paced team. They're going to be run first. And Washington, I mean, they brought in first-round pick Jahan Dotson. They're going to get back Curtis Samuel, and they got Carson Wentz. But those aren't like pace of play guru type of players. I am concerned about this game not meeting expectations. And then there's also this like looming cloud question of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Because we don't know if he's going to be suspended. We don't know the timeline. There's just a 23rd accusation or addition to that lawsuit or the set of lawsuits against Watson just this week. We don't know if he's going to be playing. And I'm concerned that it's maybe going to be Jacoby Brissett playing instead of Deshaun Watson, which in that case, it's a complete avoid for me.
Yeah, I mean the Browns are probably the biggest question mark in the whole league. So it's like these ADPs are pretty weird because they're not going to stay the way they are right now because everyone's middling it. Amari Cooper, he's dropped a good amount,
but he's
which
still wide receiver 21, which is not enough of a hedge.
Dude, that's the problem with wide receiver 21 is like with Watson, he's probably going to be a top 20 wide receiver, and without him, he won't be. So 21 just feels like everyone's just middling it. You got to make a decision there. I mean, Chubb,
Give
I'm
me
not really
Cortland
getting.
Sutton over Amari Cooper.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Chubb is probably the guy that won't move much. I mean, he's like back in the second or third round, but yeah, I mean the whole Browns offense is a pretty big question mark. But like I was liking where Njoku was going out to the top 15 rounds, but I mean since that contract he's going up. But I mean I'm still fine pulling the trigger.
He's not moved up
at his
enough, in my
price.
opinion.
Yeah, no,
Njoku.
I mean he's still the late round tight end you want to target for sure.
The Commanders defense, like maybe it's not even a Chubb game. Maybe it's a Kareem Hunt game because their defensive
Yeah.
interior and edge are the strengths of the Commanders defense, and it's the secondary and linebacker core that's the weakness. So if it is Deshaun Watson, I think that's wheels up. But if it's Nick Chubb, this is like such a wide range of outcomes game, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up Kareem Hunt because I think Kareem Hunt and David Njoku are the most Browns I'm getting for sure. I mean, I think his ADP is like low 90s, but I mean, I've consistently gotten him outside the top 100. And no, I mean, no matter who's at quarterback, he has that standalone value. He has the PPR upside. He finds the end zone. And I mean, end of the day, I mean, we don't know what the Browns going to look like with Watson. You'd think it'd be a better offense overall, but if it's Jacoby Brissett under center, they're just going to keep running the ball with Chubb and Hunt. I mean, I think he's going to return value no matter what happens in the situation. And Njoku's cheap enough where, I mean, you're not really losing out on whoever's quarterback. But yeah,
Well, you
I guess.
remember how fantasy relevant Jack Doyle was with Jacoby Brissett.
Oh, yeah, baby hands. Yeah.
All right, we'll keep going for the sake of time. Pittsburgh at Baltimore, highs in the 40s, lows in the 30s in Baltimore, Maryland, about that time of year. The Pittsburgh Steelers over the last 2 years, 9th and 7th in plays per game. And remember, in 2020, Big Ben missed almost all of the year. So even without Ben Roethlisberger, this Steelers offense is a fast-paced offense. And now they've lost Juju Smith-Schuster, but they added George Pickens as a replacement. There's talk of Claypool moving to the slot. And last year, Baltimore first in plays per game. I think that goes down. I don't think they'll maintain that because they'll probably get Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins back, but it's probably going to be in the teens. And Lamar Jackson is entering the year without a long-term contract. And I wonder if this is the opportunity for him to prove he's a passer, because that, like, NFL narrative, I think he's a decent enough passer, but the NFL doesn't view him in that way because of the rushing. And I wonder if that's something that's in his mind throughout this season.
Yeah, so I actually wrote up an article yesterday with FTN breaking down what the Ravens were doing last year. And Lamar Jackson was the best passer of his career last season. I mean, he was letting the ball rip. He was averaging over 30 pass attempts a game. Like, this Ravens offense, Lamar Jackson, I was looking at the numbers and, like, I was blown away they were passing that much. But, I mean, they want to run the ball. I mean, before last season, they led the league in rushing attempts and total rushing yards. So, they want to get back to that. But, like, when you lose J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, they're rolling out Latavius Murray, Devontae Freeman, Tyson
Guys
Williams.
who deserve to be retired.
Yeah, you can say running backs don't matter, but you're not going to run the ball with that stable of running backs. And, like, now they lost Marquis Brown. I mean, Lamar Jackson, Marquis Brown had a real connection. Like, overall, the whole Ravens offense without Lamar didn't change much. I mean, Mark Andrews got even better without Lamar Jackson, but Marquis Brown took a huge hit. And that's because Lamar's accuracy of the deep ball thrower, he was really good last year. I mean, that's what catapulted Marquis Brown. I mean, the first 9 weeks he was the wide receiver 5. And I don't know if you remember, but I mean, he was dropping balls left and right in the end zone and still.
I mean, and I remember the Detroit game where he dropped a 20+ yard catch, and that could have sealed the game there. Instead, it was Justin Tucker who had to kick like the 60-something yard field goal.
Incredible. Yeah, and the fact that he was a top 5 wide receiver, I mean, that was insane. But you got a Bateman just with the volume he's gonna get. But even him, I mean, he's not the same downfield receiver as Marquise Brown, but you hope that he gets a lot of grabs because it's just Andrews, Bateman, and I think Duvernay is right now locked into 2 wide receiver sets. We don't know, maybe Talon Wallace, which
gross.
Yeah, those two like all sprinkle.
Where's my vomit bucket? Like
right. I'm
like, Sam, those are not players I'm putting in my 18th round. I'm sorry, I just can't do it.
Yeah, like, no, I think I have 2 shares of Duvernay with Lamar Jackson just for the stack. I hope they get Julio Fuller, but I mean, you don't really you don't want 18th round Ravens pass catchers without Lamar, but
no, it's, if anything. So I'm looking at the defensive units, and the Ravens are really in a tough spot at linebacker based on Mike Clay's grades of them. So maybe this is like a Pat Freiermuth game for the Steelers, which also makes sense. Probably going to be Kenny Pickett at that point. And we don't know, how many first team reps Kenny Pickett is going to get throughout this offseason. So it may be that he's just relying on those who are close to the goal, close to the line of scrimmage, like Najee Harris. Who knows? Like, it could be Trubisky, it could be Pickett.
Yeah, it's tough for me because both teams have some good pieces that I like, but I mean, Ravens versus Steelers game, I mean, they're ugly. Like, they're defensive slugs. I mean, they're incredibly hard to watch, and like, it's always low scoring. It's always a defensive battle. Like, it doesn't matter who's playing like quarterback. These teams are going to go at it, and that's my main concern. Is because I like getting Lamar Jackson, but I mean, Pittsburgh plays Lamar tough, and it's gonna be hard to see him have a blow up. But I mean, it's not gonna be something where like that matchup drives me away from Lamar. But
no,
definitely a Week 17 matchup that I don't love. But
all right, we'll keep going. Jacksonville at Houston. This game is in Houston in a dome, so we don't have weather concerns there. But over the last 2 seasons, both teams have been 26th or worse each of the last 2 seasons in plays per game. And their defenses, I mean, looking at Jackson, the Jaguars are one of the worst defenses, and same with the Houston Texans. Looking at, the Texans are arguably the worst defensive unit. There's just a lot of maybe this is your Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne stack, or your Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk stack, and Brandon Cooks, Davis Mills. I think those are the pieces. Maybe some sprinklings of Brevin Jordan. I like him as a tight end 3, but there aren't a lot of like extra pieces. But maybe that's the sneaky part of this is the matchup that's underrated, because these are historically bad teams who are going to go against each other and aren't going to be playing for much.
Yeah, no, these two teams are definitely a good one to have like a mini stack in. I mean, it's not really like a primary stack you want to attack, but I mean, we don't know like what the Jacksonville Jaguars offense is. Like we have absolutely no idea. I mean, I like all the Jacksonville pieces of where they're going. Evan Ingram's free. Travis Etienne, I like his cause. I think he's just going to keep rising.
Oh, I think Travis Etienne is the DeAndre Swift of 2021.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, he has that safe pass catching floor. And if they're going to be playing from behind, Swift was a monster playing from behind. James Robinson, I saw, was progressing. I like James Robinson, but Travis Etienne is a whole different animal.
Looking at what Doug Peterson has done when he was the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, he was fast paced with with Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. So that pace of play may significantly increase, and that would make more fantasy relevance as well.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Cooks is probably one of the most undervalued receivers right now, which I'll take Brandon Cooks all day at cost. But I mean,
he's wide receiver 29 right now. He was wide receiver like 36 a couple months ago.
Oh yeah, I know for a fact in the big board he was outside the top 35. I was smashing that button.
It was him, Thielen, and Lockett. I was just rotating through.
Thielen is so incredible value right now. I love getting Thielen. The Thielen Cousins backdoor stack is really nice. But yeah, it is. I like Zay Jones in the 18th round too. That's a guy that I'm gravitating towards. And we saw what Zay Jones did at the backstretch of last season. He was a wide receiver 1 in week 17. And he has an ADP now, but he's still going after Laviska Shenault, which I don't even know what to say about that.
I'm not sure what to think about Shenault, like redraft or in Dynasty. Like,
I mean, they paid Zay Jones, and you saw the rumors of them pending offers. I think Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, and Christian Kirk are locked in.
Give me all the Marvin Jones, please.
Oh, I love Marvin Jones. I mean, I live in Cincy. I remember watching Marvin Jones for the Bengals for years. He's Mr. Reliable. I mean, why can't he be the wide receiver 1? I mean, I like Christian Kirk's ADP, but yeah, I mean, Marvin Jones' ADP is great, and we don't know it's going to shake up. I mean, he was Lawrence's favorite receiver last year. Why can't he be this year? But yeah, like I said, it's a good matchup to have like a secondary stack in, but probably not anyone's primary stack.
This could be like, instead of targeting the Bears, I think this is maybe the matchup that you want to be targeting if you're thinking of, you're right, the secondary or tertiary stacks, Jacksonville or Houston. We'll keep going. San Francisco at Vegas. This is also going to be in Vegas's dome, so we don't have to worry about the heat or the cold or anything like that. San Francisco, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, 28th last season in plays per game, despite making the playoffs. Like, this was a team that was slow. They run the ball. They barely squeaked in near the end of the season. I think it's going to be more in between the 28th and 11th in 2020. And Vegas, they've been 12th and 14th over the last 2 years. But I do worry that the new head coach, McDaniel, is going to slow things down a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you coming from that New England system, which it's going to be a headache for the whole backfield. We don't know what it's going to be like. But, I mean, I love Devontae Adams in the second round still. I know it's a new team, but Devontae Adams is a beast. So I'll keep taking Devontae Adams. And if I happen to take Devontae Adams, I don't mind Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr is in line for a big season. Darren Waller, I think, is fairly priced. It's another guy where I'm like not targeting, but I'll take shares of here and there. But yeah, I'd say I like the Raiders pass catchers for sure.
So here's some interesting things about looking at the defensive grades. The Raiders, their weakness, defensive interior. So Elijah Mitchell, smash game. Maybe it's a Davis Price game if Elijah Mitchell is hurt.
Yeah, I mean, that's another interesting thing. I mean, the last 2 seasons, the San Francisco have had an RB1 in week 17 both years. But the problem is it's a different guy every time. It's always like it's a guy that you're not expecting. Jeff Wilson 2 years ago. Last year was Elijah Mitchell when Trey Sermon, Raheem Mostert were getting drafted. But I mean, I thought I'd be. It's pretty interesting because I didn't think I'd be high on Elijah Mitchell. But I mean, I'm really liking his cost right now in drafts. I mean, he's going like outside the top 6 rounds, which I mean, that's fine. That's a fine cost to pay for Elijah Mitchell. I mean, TDP, his ADP is starting to fall. I'm like, I mean, I'd prefer him in like the 16th, 17th, 18th round because to me, he just feels like any of the other 17th, 18th round handcuffs. So I think he might drop too. But yeah, I'm pretty surprised because I actually like where Mitchell is going, which isn't something that I thought I'd say. With I mean Debo, he's fallen in drafts too. I mean, I've seen him go like after the top 20 picks, which I'm okay with that. I mean, he was going at like the 1-2 turn early in the big board. So, but I mean, is Lance gonna be the quarterback? We hope so. But
We'll see. We will
yeah.
see. Whereas looking at the 49ers secondary, they're the weakest part of that unit. So you mentioned Devontae Adams, even more so. Not only is he going to get target share, but that Derek Carr is going to they're going to be fighting for their playoff lives. I still
Mm-hmm.
think they're the worst team in the division, but like we saw the Raiders pull off miracles against the Chargers, push them out. This team has a lot of grit. So I wonder if they're going to identify that that's a weakness against the 49ers and take advantage with Devontae Adams.
Yeah, that's another interesting thing with the Raiders is like the past 2 seasons, week 17, they have a wide receiver that wasn't drafted that finished as a wide receiver one. Like it was Nelson Aguilar 2 years ago, Zay Jones last year. I'm thinking maybe Demarcus Robinson might be that dude.
Ooh,
He's not getting
calling it
drafted right
now.
now.
Calling it now.
Yeah, I mean he's not. I
Let's
mean
go, Sam.
that's another guy I just want to take notes of because if he's not going to get drafted, as soon as we get closer to the season, these are the guys that you want to take shots on. Because even like in DFS, when you play in a large field tournament, like when you have that one guy that's going off and he's only scoring for your team, I mean, you just climb up the leaderboards. Like you're not competing with anyone. All the points go to you. But I'm joking with that. That is someone that like he doesn't have an ADP at all. But I mean, they
We've seen a
brought him
couple
in.
spike weeks from him when he was on Kansas City.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, they were comfortable trading away.
Edwards.
Yeah, Brian Edwards. So I mean, you got to think that they're fine rolling out with Demarcus Robinson, and like I mean, we've seen in the past 2 seasons, Aguilar, Zay Jones. I mean, Hunter Renfrow was barely getting drafted. Like he had an 18th round ADP, but and we see these Raiders guys come out of nowhere. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. Maybe it's a trend that keeps going. Demarcus Robinson, mark it down.
I love it. We are going to replay this back come
Oh yeah.
January. Awesome.
BBM 3 winner, Demarcus Robinson. Book
League
it.
winner. I love it. We got a couple of more matchups, and then Sam and I will call it a night. New York Jets travel all the way to Seattle. The highs and lows are going to be in the 40s in Seattle in January. The New York Jets have been 26th and 31st in plays per game over the last 2 seasons, and Seattle's been 32nd. So they were worst last year, and I don't think they got any better. They didn't put themselves in a position to improve their pace of play for
Oh man.
2022. This could be like one of those like gross 13-10 games.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I'm expecting. But I mean, we talked about this earlier. Tyler Lockett, his ADP I can get behind, and like we think it's gonna be some sort of rotation. Geno Smith, Drew Lock. We don't. And they're saying Geno Smith has an edge right now early in camp. They're
He's
all
the
rumor
quarterback.
mill.
He's better than Drew Lock.
Yeah, I know. I completely agree with you. I mean, he was keeping him afloat. And I mean, he made DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett fantasy viable. It's not terrible. But yeah, no, I'm
He
completely
kept them
with
fantasy
you.
viable. I don't know if he made them fantasy viable.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's
Yeah,
not give
sorry,
Gino too
sorry,
much credit, Sam.
sorry. Yeah, but I
uh,
mean, you
Looking
know
at
what I
the
mean. I mean,
defenses, though, there's holes everywhere in both defenses. You mentioned last year that it was the Seattle Detroit game. There's just holes, and maybe you want to just sprinkle in a little bit of stacks here and there. But this is not a primary stack game once again.
Yeah. I mean, Ken Walker versus Brees Hall, that's a pretty interesting storyline right there.
I
But
like it.
yeah, I mean, Seattle just wants to ground and pound. But they want to play an ugly
They
game.
want to go
But
back to the 1960s.
yeah. But yeah, definitely not a game I can get behind for sure.
In our pre-show meeting, Sam, we talked about the Minnesota Green Bay game and how the highs are in the 30s, but the lows could be in the teens or even lower. This could be one of those snow games in Green Bay. The Packers were already the slowest team in the NFL, and then they lose Devontae Adams. They replaced him with Christian Watson and Sammy Watkins. Minnesota over the last 2 seasons, 13th and 19th in plays per game. But they bring in the former Rams offensive coordinator, Kevin O'Connell, whose Rams in neutral game scripts over the last 2 seasons was second in pass rate in neutral game scripts. And there's already been a lot of chatter about this new offense from Minnesota and how Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen are saying it's nothing like what we were doing before. And there's talk of Dalvin Cook lining up in the slot. And there's a lot of things that Kirk Cousins could be Matthew Stafford in this parallel universe. And you've got your Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp and Jefferson and Thielen parallels, and you've got your Van Jefferson, Amir Smith-Marset parallels. Like there's a lot of parallelism in those offenses, and I wonder if it still may not be a high-scoring game, but it might be higher than what we saw last year when Minnesota traveled to Green Bay.
Yeah, no, I mean, you hit on it. I absolutely love all of the Minnesota Vikings ADP. Justin Jefferson, the top 4 is a smash. Dalvin Cook, you can get in the second round, which I don't mind. Kirk Cousins is probably my most rostered second quarterback, just because I've been able to take Thielen and Kirk Cousins. I mean,
And Irv
that's
Smith
stacked.
even has
And
fallen dramatically.
oh yeah, for sure. I'm like, I love him at cost, and I mean, he's only fallen because of his injury from last season. Because and he was pretty pricey in the middle of the summer last season. So I
Yes, he
love that.
was.
KJ Osborne is a fair price. It sort of just naturally makes itself on the Minnesota side. Green Bay is there's not really great values. I mean, Alan Lazard is okay at price. I mean, he keeps going higher and higher. I liked him when he was outside the top 100, but he just keeps getting pricier. Tanya, I mean, I don't know. There's mixed feelings about Tanya, and I'm not really in on him. I don't know how he's recovering from his injury. I mean, he could be a great value. I mean, because there just aren't many pass catchers. Christian Watson's ADP I can't get behind at all. I'm completely fading that. I don't mind taking shots in the 18th round of Dubes if I have a Rodgers or Minnesota stack.
I mean, the Packers defense, like I look across the board, and they are the most put together defense. Maybe the Saints are rivaling them, but none of their positions are lower than a 2.5 grade out of 4 per Mike Clay, whereas the Saints, their defensive interior 1.6, but all the others 3.6 or higher. It's just that the Packers are so good on defense. Their weakness is wide receiver. I wonder if this is where like the arbitrage is, instead of drafting Packers wide receivers, you draft Aaron Jones, you draft AJ Dillon. Like that's the value instead of going after these wide receivers. Plus, looking at the Vikings defense, their defensive interior is a 2.3. Yeah, they could be.
Yeah, and I mean I know Rodgers coming off an MVP season, but I do think that's what the Packers are going to try and do. Just gonna be the two-headed monster with Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, run it as much as possible. And I mean, another interesting nugget, actually, AJ Dillon's been an RB1 in Week 17 the past 2 seasons. He might be that guy that you need again in the winter.
He's my most drafted running back.
Oh,
Green Bay Packers card behind me.
Oh yeah, no, I see the David Bakhtiari jersey. Oh, there's Lazard right there. That's awesome. But yeah, I mean
Bakhtiari was once asked, Aaron, how far do you think Aaron Rodgers can throw the ball? And he said somewhere between 68 and 70 yards.
That's awesome.
But at any rate, sorry. I think I agree with you. AJ Dillon, he's one of the values, and especially in 0 RB builds. I think that he's the perfect 0 RB. Maybe him and Kareem Hunt. They're the
Yeah.
perfect 0 RB build type of players. You just load up on these high upside wide receivers and then let Dylan or Kareem Hunt come to
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said Kareem Hunt because it's weird because it's like a reverse like Chubb and Kareem Hunt because Aaron Jones is a pass catching back, but he goes a lot earlier. Now he's in the first round. I had some Kareem Hunt teams, and like you could flex them and feel completely fine about it. So I think it's a great comparison for sure because I mean that's their only option is to run through Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. So I definitely do think that they're both in line for a big season. I think you're right. Just sort of avoiding the Packers wide receivers and just go after the running backs. I don't mind that at all.
All right, we'll finish up with these last two. I've kept Sam long enough. The LA Rams travel to the LA Chargers. They don't travel at all. It's their home stadium. They share the stadium. It is a dome, so it doesn't matter the weather, even though it's probably going to be beautiful in LA that time. It's going to be a night game here. The Rams over the last 2 seasons, 15th and 5th in plays per game. They did lose their offensive coordinator in O'Connell, as I mentioned earlier. So that may be a little bit of adjustment at the beginning of the season, but you expect that they find their footing, they find their offense, and it's still full wheels up. And the Chargers are so desperate to make the playoffs. Like you can hear it in how Staley is talking at OTAs. You can just it's the air they're breathing right now is they're so hungry to make the playoffs because this team is ultra talented. They've got so many good things going on. The running back, the quarterback, the wide receiver position, the offensive line is really good. Their defense is really great, except for the Chargers, their defensive interior and their linebacker core. So looking at this could be a Cam Akers game. This could be a Tyler Higbee game. So just throwing out a couple names for this particular matchup. And then on the flip side, with the Rams, their edge rushers and their safeties are their weak spots. So what do you think about this matchup, Sam?
This is a game that I'm heavily targeting, and it's not even just the game environment. I mean, from both sides, the Chargers and Rams. I love their values in drafts. I'll take Cooper Kupp in the top two. Keenan Allen, you can. I mean, there's this whole debate: Keenan Allen or Mike Williams. Pick your poison. You can take who you want in the
I mean,
third
I'll take Mike
round.
Williams, let me tell you, but
Yeah, I mean, is there a
last year
better
there
best ball
were
guy?
last year there were 43 best ball, yeah, and 40 there were 43 wide receivers last year who had a higher wide receiver one rate than Keenan Allen. Like
Yeah, I mean, we know what Keenan Allen is.
he's your
Now he's
wide receiver too.
aging
He's
too.
Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, no, that's a great comparison too with Deontay Johnson. But regardless, it just falls in line when you take Cooper Kupp in the first round, and you get one of the Chargers in the third round, and then I like Allen Robinson's value. I mean, Justin Herbert is a top 3 quarterback for me. Matt Stafford, I think, is pretty underpriced. I mean, he goes what like 20 picks after Joe Burrow. But I mean, yeah, I mean, you mentioned Higbee. Higbee's a pretty good value. I think he's being discounted with the injury, which I think he's more than okay with. I mean, Austin Eckler, he's a top 3 back for me, but Cam Akers,
Getting
I'm not.
Spiller, I think, is the bet here. If
Yeah.
Eckler gets hurt, which we've seen Eckler miss games,
Mhm.
Spiller was brought in and drafted by this regime to be the number 2, and they haven't signed Justin Jackson. Spiller
And
is the pass catcher, and we've seen Herbert use the Eckler role pretty significantly for fantasy.
yeah, that's definitely my main concern because I do think they want a little bit bigger of a goal line back, and I think Spiller is going to be that guy. I mean, everyone is all over Spiller until he tested. I think he's a talented back for sure. But I mean, I'm not getting much of Akers, but I think Darrell Henderson's probably one of my most rostered players for sure. I don't know how he's so cheap. I mean, the last time we saw him in the Super Bowl, he was a better, more explosive back. He was a pass catching back. And I mean, I do think Akers came back too early. So I'm not looking too much in what Akers did at the back end of the season. But I mean, I do think McVay wants to use Henderson. So I don't think you're getting a workhorse back where Akers is going, and he is surrounded by other workhorse backs. But I mean, I'm just naturally getting more Henderson because I like his cost. And like I said, I mean, that matchup just falls in line with me because I just like the values of both sides, and it just naturally correlates. So yeah, that's definitely a game that I'm targeting. I mean, you got Gerald Everett in the 17th round. That's insane value. But
Yes.
yeah.
I like getting Spiller and Henderson if I'm like, let's say I go with an anchor running back build. I
Mm-hmm.
love getting both of those, not only because they're the handcuffs, but they're also in that same game that's going to be a high scoring game we anticipate. So,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
and the possibility that one of them is playing significant snaps in that game is pretty high, I think.
Exactly. I mean, even if Eckler's healthy and Akers are healthy, I mean, who's to say that Spiller and Henderson aren't just the ones that fall into the end zone a couple of times? I feel like those are safe bets to make. And I mean, there's low risk and you got a good floor, but yeah, I like that a lot.
All right, we'll wrap it up here. Sam, thanks in advance for sticking with me and chatting with me. We've got one last game, Buffalo at Cincinnati. You're in Cincinnati. Talk to us about the Bengals because I put out a video a couple weeks ago and it was the Joe Burrow versus Jalen Hurts ADP debate. And at that time, it was Joe Burrow going a round and a half ahead of Jalen Hurts. Instead, now it's Jalen Hurts ahead of Joe Burrow. And I'll take the credit. I'll take the credit for moving the ADP. I single-handedly moved Jalen
Oh
Hurts
yeah,
over Joe Burrow.
for
But talk
sure.
to me about the Bengals and maybe the expensive is the expense worth the cost? Is the expense worth what you're going to get back if you're stacking with Bengals for this particular matchup?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I'm pretty out on the Bengals at cost. I don't mind taking. No, I mean I don't mind taking Jamar Chase in the top 5 picks, but I think there's a pretty clear drop off after Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson. But I don't know. I mean, like you said, the Jalen Hurts and the Joe Burrow thing. I mean, I like Jalen Hurts before Joe Burrow before they got AJ Brown. I mean, I,
Yes,
I can't stomach that cost. I mean, even right now, Brady and Russell Wilson are going behind Joe Burrow. I still like them more than
oh,
Joe Burrow.
absolutely.
So I have zero exposure to Joe Burrow right now, which I mean that's someone that I'm gonna have to get just to get some exposure. But I can't stomach that. I like T Higgins at cost. Yeah, that I mean third round T Higgins. You'll sign me up for that all day. But that's why I'm afraid to with Jamar Chase's ADP because I mean Higgins was out targeting Chase in the playoffs. I mean eh, he's criminally underrated. I mean, he could be a wide receiver one on so many different teams, but I don't mind that. I love Diggs. I'll take Diggs in the first round. I don't mind that. You can get him in the back of the first. He was going the second early on, but Gabe Davis is pricey, but I get the appeal. You see a lot of people come out on Twitter and talk about Gabe Davis's ADP. That's just elevated with people trying to get the Josh Allen, Gabe Davis.
Oh, get out of here with Gabe Davis. Oh, don't even mention him on
Yeah,
the
no,
podcast.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not gonna get Gabe Davis
Gosh.
at cost unless I have Josh Allen. But even then, which I can only take Josh Allen if I got Diggs, and I haven't been able to get Diggs and Josh Allen in the third round yet. But yeah, I won't take him for the third round.
Let me see. I'm going to pull up. I sent out a tweet yesterday and it was I've been messing around with some graphing on R and not invite. I want to share screen, particularly this Chrome tab of I hope this works out. Maybe I have to zoom in a little bit. Let me
Oh.
zoom in. Okay. So here. So this is gold. I sent this out and it was if you just look at it, this is Jamison Crowder versus Gabriel Davis over the last 2-3 seasons because Gabe Davis has only played 2 seasons. And the little line that's going down is their 84th percentile outcome. So as you can tell, Crowder over the last 3 seasons, 2 of those seasons, he's been at like what, 22, 26, somewhere in that range. And one season he had it, what was that, 16, 17, looks like. Whereas Gabe Davis, both of his seasons, 16, 17. The floor for Crowder is Gabe Davis's ceiling.
I mean, I'm so glad you brought this tweet up because I've been smashing Crowder. I mean, Crowder. I don't understand what the delay was because in the big board, even after he signed with Buffalo, he was still in the 18th, 19th round. Those were going 20 rounds long, and I didn't understand that at all. I mean, since Beasley's been on the team, he's been second in catches and targets, just behind Diggs. And Crowder's going to go right into that slot role. So, that's why I can't get behind Gabe Davis ADP either. Because, why would I take Gabe Davis when I can just get Crowder and get that same exposure? And it's talk about the Bengals. Crowder goes multiple rounds after Tyler Boyd, but what's the
Crowder is
difference between those?
63. He's wide receiver 63, 137th. That's round 12. Round 12
Yeah.
Crowder. All day, every day, twice
Yeah,
on
still.
100 times on Sunday.
It's ridiculous to me. Do you have Tyler Boyd's ADP pulled up?
Yeah, I can pull that up. Give me one sec. Tyler Boyd, wide receiver 54. So that's the end of the 10th round. I still think Tyler Boyd is a good value, but I think that Crowder is the better value.
Yeah, it's the same play. Crowder's in a better offense too, and I can see Crowder falling into the end zone more times than Tyler Boyd in that offense. But yeah, like I said, I don't really love the Bengals ADP, so it's hard for me to get on the Bengals side. And I'm not gonna take Allen in the second round. If I get Diggs, I'll take Allen in the third round, even though I don't like taking quarterbacks that early. Gabe,
At that point.
Yeah, you just got to. Gabe Davis, I'll only take if I have Allen and Diggs locked up. But just if he falls at ADP, I'll probably take him. But I'm not going to take Gabe Davis where he's going. Crowder, I'll take all day. I'm actually really liking where Singletary's ADP is dropping because I do think he's going to get the majority of the touches, even if it's a split. But he's going outside. He's 110 almost between 105 to 110, which I feel comfortable with that. You're still getting the lead back and maybe the league's best offense. We saw him down the stretch. He can just fall into the end zone any given week, and he'll likely be your RB3 that you can just get spike weeks out of. So, I don't mind Singletary either. James Cook is fair. He's pretty close to Singletary. If you ask me to pick between the two, I'll take Singletary. I just want exposure to the Bills offense for sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to find where there we go. Same with James Cook. Yeah, some underexposure to James Cook, but he could be part of this offense, and they drafted him for a reason. You did hear that the Buffalo Bills had initially signed J.D. McKissick or verbally committed and then reneged on that. Nevertheless, I agree with you. I think the Bengals are overpriced, but if you want to get in on a little bit of it, you gotta pay up if you want the Bengals right now.
Yeah, Hayden Hurts actually a pretty good value in the 18th round. This dude, he's played with Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts, and he was a first round pick. The Ravens took Hayden Hurst before they took Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. So he's a talented player. He doesn't have Kyle Pitts or Mark Andrews, so who knows? He can find the end zone a couple of times, and he's practically free. So.
Well, and looking at the matchups really quickly to wrap this up, the linebacking core for the Bengals is their weak point. So this might be a Dawson Knox game. That's an interesting spot. And then also looking at the Bills, their defensive interior, the you have to give it to the Bengals, though. They did upgrade their offensive line significantly. La'el Collins at left tackle or moved to right tackle. I don't know. He's one of the best tackles in the NFL. And they upgraded both of their guard positions. Each of those guards are a 20-plus PFF grade improvement over their predecessor. That's a significant shift. So I expect that their defensive interior, Joe Mixon, this might be where Joe Mixon is able to get a little bit more movement in the middle relative to other spots. So this might be a fade game, but you want to get a little bit of exposure given the high offenses.
Yeah, Bills and Bengals, you got to have exposure to the game for sure. But yeah, you hit it. Bengals had one of the best off seasons in the entire league for sure. But Mixon in the second round, I can get behind for sure. But
Mixon early or late in the first. Oops, did I say
that? No, I have no problem with that at all. And what's the difference between Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry? Mixon better offense. He stayed healthy the whole season. We feel a lot better about the Bengals and the Titans. You can say that running backs don't matter. They're a large part of their environment. We like the Bengals environment, but yeah. No, I can get behind Mixon for sure.
Awesome. Sam, thank you so much for taking an hour and a half of your time tonight. I know it gets late. I'm on the East Coast as well. So it's we're creeping past 10:30. Thank you so much for stopping by and talking week 17 with me tonight. Make sure you're following Sam on Twitter, SC_FFB. Sam, you're at FTN Fantasy. Is that where all of your stuff is? Is there any more that you want to
Yep.
give the listeners your bit?
No, yeah, it'll all be at FTN, and yeah, you mentioned the Twitter, but yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate it. Next week, I'm going to do some live drafts on DraftKings, and then also Adam Krautwurst and I are going to do an FFPC draft. So there's some live drafts coming up next week. Make sure to tune in, subscribe to the Best Bell Fantasy Football Podcast on your YouTube, and give the 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts. It allows me to keep pumping out free content and also makes my wife happy so that I can tell her that good things are happening with the podcast. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Have a great evening and good luck in the best ball streets.